Okay, let's look at the last two outlines in Designer Plus. So we have the Blackwork outline and the pattern outline. These are very similar. They're just, the Blackwork ones are divided out as looking more like Blackwork designs, but they behave very similarly. Let's start with the Blackwork. Let's create an open object. Left click, right click, left click, enter. And I didn't select the Blackwork run, did I? So let's change that to red for a start. Let's select it so it's easy to see, and let's change it to the Blackwork. Okay, there we are. So we can see that there is a default Blackwork pattern, and this is it. And we can see that on this line the design is almost butting up. It actually overlaps a little bit here. I'll see if I can find somewhere where it just meets. It's a little bit different here, a little bit different here. This is because it's following a curved line, so it's never going to be exactly the matching up on the points, because it has to get around the curve, and it's quite a wide design. And let's go to the reshape tool, and we can see that it has put as many of the motifs in as possible from the very start to the very end. So if that means a slight overlap in parts, that's what it does to get a whole number of the pattern without changing the size of the pattern. So it's important to understand what's going on when you're digitizing with patterns and Blackworks. And this applies with the candle wicking as well. I just started with the candle wicking because I thought it was a little bit easier to understand about the pink markers. So in the reshape tool, of course, we have exactly the same options as I showed in the candle wicking video. So that's part 3 of the object properties video series. So I'll put a link to all the parts down below so you can catch up if you've missed the earlier parts. But just quickly, if you select one of those pink diamonds, you can move the individual motifs just like in lettering, and you can perform various functions with the tools around here. On this pattern, the digitizing line runs through the middle of the motif. This isn't always the case, so it's important to know what you're dealing with your motifs. So we can see here at the end point, the end's right on this point. At the start point, it's right on this point, and in between there is a black line. If you have your show outlines showing, you can actually not be in the reshape tool, so you get rid of all those nodes and tools and things, and you can see if you've got your show outline showing where the digitizing line is. It's the black line that runs through the middle. So if you turn that off, you can't see it, but if you turn it on, you can see it. So that's a really quick way to find out where the digitizing line, the line you actually made your clicks on to digitize, falls within the motifs, or how the motifs are sitting on that digitized line. It's probably a better description. Alright, now we understand all that. In the Blackwork Fill Object Properties, let's have a look at those. You have a size here and spacing, so you can change the size. It will be proportionally changed in this case, so unlike using the handles here, you will proportionally change all the motifs, and the spacing is equal to the size, so therefore there's no gap, or as little gap as possible. If I was to make the spacing 10 and apply that, you will see I'll get a slight gap. Let's just go OK to get rid of that. And if I go to, I've got my show connectors on, let's go to the reshape tool. I didn't make a big enough gap for it to actually create jump stitches, but there will be a small stitch between each motif. If I go to true view, you'll actually see that. Let's turn off that outlines now. And you can actually see, let's go to select, that little stitch in there. So it's not showing up as a jump stitch. There won't be a tie in or tie off because of this. The gap is too small. So if I'm in the out of true view and in the reshape tool, there's no tie-ins or tie-offs indicated by little circles or triangles. So depending on if you don't mind a little stitch in between each motif and you'd prefer them spread out, try and keep under 2mm difference between the size of the motif and the size of the spacing, so that you don't get ties in, because it would take forever to stitch out if it had to tie off after each motif. Alright, the other things you get in the object properties, and I'm basically trying to just add on to what I've said in the previous video, so please go back and watch all the earlier videos, because a lot of this stuff is the same in these later stitches. But there's little things that I think of along the way that I'm just adding in now. So we can also select our patterns. Now in Blackwork, there's no categories. There's only all the Blackwork tools. And don't forget, the default is it comes up in just line drawings, but if you want to see these as true view, click on the show true view icon up here and you'll see them as true view. So there are a lot of lovely motifs in there, but some of them are quite large. For instance, let's choose this one and apply, and you can see that that's quite large. Let's have a look at the show outlines and go to true view and go out of the reshape tool. We're in select. Yes, I'm just trying to find the line. There it is. So if I deselect, I'll see a black line. So in this case, the digitizing line actually falls at the top of the motif, which is very interesting. So there's, this is one of those cases where if you needed those motifs to be on the other side of the line, you would have to digitize right to left. So let's get an open object. Let's choose that one again. So we'll go to our Blackwork, we'll select, we'll go down to, if I can remember which one it was, this one I think. And okay, and we'll digitize right to left, enter. And this time when I zoom in, the black line is at the bottom, and so therefore, because I digitized right to left, I've got the motif sitting on the other side of the digitizing line. So that could be something you need to do at some stage. There's some beautiful designs in there. You can do all sorts of things with them, bordering and patterns, but just be aware too when you go round curves that you're going to get some distortion of the pattern on, especially a big pattern like this, on the curve. So these actually work better in straight lines, but if you don't mind a little bit of irregularity in one side, it's not, there's no police telling you you can't do this, but just be aware that you will get some variation as it more or less makes it into a wedge shape to fit in the spaces. Okay, to fit around the curve. All right, let's select both of those and delete those. And delete. Now the pattern run, let's get an open object, choose pattern run. I'll choose red straight away and we'll digitize the default. Enter, and again there is a default one, which is this one. Now you can see the black line because I've got outlines showing running through the middle here. It's not actually the middle, it's about 2/3 the way up, so just be aware of that. So again you could digitize in the opposite direction. So let's we've still got all those tools there, so let's go back in the opposite direction. Let's put a sharp corner there just for interest's sake. Enter. So I put a square node here, and so I've got a sharper corner. It's a bit hard to tell with this particular motif, but here you can see now that my motifs are upside down compared to these ones, because I digitized in the opposite direction. Alright, now I'll just delete that second one and select this one and go to the object properties. So we have exactly the same as we did with the Blackwork. We've got the pattern number, the size and the spacing. And again, if I go to the reshape tool, you get exactly the same tools. Now, something I didn't mention, let's just go okay here for a minute. There are some tools to change the whole line. So I've shown you to select a pink diamond and you get tools to change just that motive. But there are some, before you select any pink diamonds, if you look carefully, there'll be a triangle halfway along here, which you can just increase the height of all those motifs. That one will work quite well because you're not going to get jump stitches, because your start and end points will still all be lined up along that curve, along that digitizing line. Okay, so increasing the height is something that's going to still result in a reasonable stitch out, provided your curve is not too steep and you don't get things bunching up in the curve. Okay, I'll undo that. This one here is to, it's actually to lengthen them, but because they're, you've filled your whole line, that's not actually working. So let's try this one. This one actually proportionally scales, so I've now got them all overlapped. And they've actually extended past the end of the digitizing line because of their size. So the last motif will be centered over that digitizing line. That's as far as you can go. So if I was to move this motif on this end, so I've selected that pink diamond, I can only move it that far. If I keep dragging with my mouse kept down, it won't move any further. So you could space these out manually if you still want some sort of overlapped look. But it would be better just to enter some sizes and spacing in the object properties so that you get an even spacing all the way along. So that's why they've overlapped, because you've actually changed the size of them in the reshape tool, and so therefore the digitizing line has not changed. Undo, undo, undo. Alright, now we've got lots to choose from in the pattern runs. So if we go to the object properties and click on the select tool, we've actually got categories. So I probably have different categories to you because I've created some crochet categories and some tapestry. But if you scroll down here, you will have a number of categories. For instance, that one, that one, that one, not that one, that one, that one, that one. Yes, so there's not that one. There's quite a few categories here. So you can select any. So if I go to the Bonina version 5 patterns, so these have been around for a long time, but they include them every update. You can see a whole series of patterns there you can choose from. And so let's choose this leaf, for instance. Okay, and apply that. And now I've got a row of leaves. I can go back to select and I can go down to hem stitches. Well, there's only one. Let's do Nature 2. Nature 2, I think, is a new one to version 9, so that's interesting. Let's do this lovely little rose one. And go OK and apply. So we've got a rose, and you can see here the digitizing line is here, and the rose actually goes up and back down again. So understanding that helps you lay things out, and also understands how the size of the motif will determine how well it gets around curves and sharp corners and what it looks like. So hopefully that gives you, well, it certainly gives you an idea of what's in the object properties. You've got your sizing and your spacing. You see this one's 24.5 millimeters long. Okay, now I think I did circles or ellipses and rectangles previously, but maybe not. So let's do an ellipse. Let's get the pattern run and let's right click on it first so that we can select one, because if we set this up before we start digitizing, then everything from now on will be whatever we've selected in here. So let's go to the Nature 2 and we'll go to that rose and OK and OK, and I'll make an ellipse. Well, I'll make a circle first and enter. So it's left click in the center, left click on the side, and then enter. This is really pretty, but it's a really big, I'm only at 0.5%. So if I go to actual size, it's quite a big circle, not too big. That will be really pretty. If I turn off the outlines, you'll see it better. And if I change the colour, so let's select it and make it red. Why is it not turning red? It's interesting. Maybe I had more than one thing selected. Won't turn red. Let's see if I can turn it pink. There we go. Now I'll turn it red. Now it's red. I don't know why that didn't work, but there we go. So a really pretty circle, but you can see here that it's fairly evenly put those roses round. If it needed to, it would have to put a tiny little gap between them, or it might overlap them ever so slightly so that it fits around the circle. When you get to a rectangle, however, you can run into all sorts of problems. So let's get the rectangle. And we know we're going to get our rose again because we've set that up before we digitized. We've got red selected, so we should get a red square. Left click, drag, and left click to create your square. Alright, I still didn't get red. That's really strange because red was my active colour. Maybe that's because, I don't know why that is. Let's select it and try and make it red. No, I'll have to make it pink first and then red. That's really something not quite right going on there. Okay, let's have a look. It doesn't look too bad at first glance, but in fact it's quite good. But sometimes you get funny things going on in the corners. This one's worked out really quite well. Let's put the outlines back on. I mean, I would be fairly happy with that. I probably wouldn't fiddle with it. Let's change the motif. So we'll right click on it, go to the object properties and select, and we'll go back to the heirloom motifs, and we'll do this one here and go OK and apply. Now let's have a look. So here you can see, because this one ended here, to start the next one, because I had to go around a square corner, this line here has actually gone over the top of the edge of this motif here to get around the corner. And if we look at this corner, it's totally different. We've got a gap here. I'm in true view. So if I go out of true view, you can see I've actually got a jump stitch formed there because of the way the motif centers on the line and to get around the sharp corner. So I'm going to show you a way to get your corners better. Now with an asymmetrical design like this, it's not that easy to get a nice corner, because no matter what I do, I'm going to have the stitching going in the opposite direction to the motif beforehand. So I can't get them both going out this way, for instance. Even if I flip that over that way, then down here it's going to be round the wrong way as well. So even if I cut the corners of this into 4 separate sections, I still won't be able to get a really nice corner with an asymmetrical design. So let's change that first of all to a symmetrical design. So we'll right click. So this would be if you wanted to put a border around a quilt label or something like that, then be mindful of the type of motif you choose so that you can actually get a nice corner. So, well, this star shape here is going to be symmetrical, so I'll select that one, go OK and apply that. Now if we zoom in, we've still got a bit of overlap going on here in this corner and this corner. It's not too bad. We've got like 2 legs sticking up there. I'm going to actually shrink the size. Oh no, that'll shrink the size of the motif as well. Here the corner's different again. So it's not as good, even though it's better than the asymmetrical design. It's still, it's a very small design, this one. I'm going to make it a 4mm with a 4mm spacing, so it actually is easier for you to see. Apply. That's better. So when we look at this corner here, we've got a bit of overlap. Let's look down at this corner here. We've got, it's not the same. So in order to get a really nice border, it's actually better to create open objects rather than a closed rectangle. So you would start with a guideline of a rectangle in just running stitch. Let's make it pink. And then we'll do blue stitching. So here's my rectangle. I'll make it a bit smaller because that was a really big rectangle. And enter. And if we zoom in there, we can see we've got a running stitch rectangle. So that's the size we want. You could use your grid and snap to grid to get a size that's really nice, or you can just resize this rectangle in your transformation toolbars. So if it's selected, you'll be able to change the width and height up here till you've got a rectangle roughly the size you want it. Then you would create your click off, open object, pattern run, and I'm going to right click so that I can choose that motif and go OK. And in here, as I said, I want it 4 millimeters by 4 millimeter with 4 millimeter spacing, and go apply that and go OK. And now I'm going to digitize from this corner to this corner, a single line, enter. Now I can duplicate that, so select it, and actually I could just right click. If you hold your control key down and right click and drag, no, I'll select it and duplicate it, and now with the top one, the second one selected, I'm going to hold my control key down and left click. I'm going to left click to select it and hold my mouse key down, and as I start to move, press my control key, which will restrict it to a vertical movement, which means I can bring it down to the bottom of my rectangle here and release my mouse. So now I've got two sides that are exactly right. Now here's the tricky part when you're going to do your other sides. So we've got to click off and create another open object, and I'm going to start in the corner and hold my control key down so I've got a vertical line and finish down here, and we'll see what that looks like. Enter. Okay, so we've got this finish in the corner. Now it's entirely up to you whether you restrict yourself to the actual size of the rectangle or whether you give yourself a little bit of leeway. So if I was to select, if you want to create a different sort of corner, so if I was to select this, escape and select and hold my control key down, I could actually pull this out. Select it and pull it out first, then hold your control and as soon as you start to pull, and I could move this. Oh, it's moved too far. So that I get a slightly different look in the corner. I can nudge it with my arrows. Let's zoom into a corner so we can see what's happening. So I can now nudge that with my arrows till I get that to where I want it. It's still going, it's still going. It's stopped, we need a few more nudges till they meet up. And that's I've probably gone too far now. That's about as good as I'm going to get it. So that will give me a different look in this corner again. I could also then reshape this and bring this line down so that I can get a star right in the corner. So by fiddling around, you can design your corner by controlling the length and positioning of this second, the vertical lines. So I could come up here now to bring that to that point, just up a bit, down a bit. Oops, went sideways. I think that's about as good as I'm going to get it. Oh, that's better. So now I've got an actual star right in the corner. Now I can copy that one. I'll right click and drag a copy off and position it over here. So I'd zoom in and get that positioned. And I'll just nudge it with my arrows up a little bit. Okay, so with a symmetrical design, it is possible to create a rectangle just the way you want your corners. Of course, you will need to check your start and end points so that you don't have jump stitches, because if I go out of true view, look at all these jump stitches all over the place. Of course, I've had all these other objects beforehand. That's what these are down here. But the actual rectangle, if we go to our reshape tool and we start with our first one, reshape, it's starting and end. We're looking for the end cross, which is up this end, so we need this one to start. In fact, let's move that down to the that's ending there, and if I tab to the next object, which was the bottom one, so first of all we've got to put them in the right order. So we want this horizontal one followed by this vertical one, so I'm just going to move that up one, then followed by the next horizontal one and the last vertical one. So we now got in the right order. That's changed the jump stitches. We'll go back to this one. It's ending here. I'll go to the reshape tool. We've got our red cross there. If I tab, this one's starting here, but it has created a jump stitch. So that's the next thing you have to double check. I'm actually going to select that and move that down a bit now that I'm zoomed right in, so that it is actually lined up a bit better. Okay, so what I could do is digitize from the end point here a line across to here and up to there. So let's go to our, I'm going to delete everything else other than the rectangle because I don't want all this other stuff interfering. Let's delete all that. And I don't know what that is, but I'm going to do, no, I can't even select it. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go to my travel toolbar, go to the beginning of the design, then I'm going to go through object by object. So I'm clicking on jump by object and the forward arrow. There is some other object over there, but I can't find it. But anyway, then there's my rectangle, pink rectangle, which that can be deleted now too. So we'll delete that. And then we'll go forward another object, which is my first top row here, and you can see here my white cross. So I can digitize an open object, just a running stitch in the same color, and if I just start on the cross and follow one of the other stitches and back up to the start of this one and enter, that gets rid of that jump stitch. Then it will stitch down to here. Now this one is ending here and this one is ending here as well. So what I need to do with this one here is flip it over the other way. So let's flip it over. Now when I zoom in, this one is starting because I've got a little circle there and I've just got this short jump stitch here. Let's just get my select tool and line this up a bit better. Okay, so I need to travel to that point though because I haven't got my white cross here, so I need to travel through one more object. So hit my arrow to travel through the object, and now my white cross is there, and then I can digitize my open object running stitch, and I would go from the cross to the circle. Enter. And you would repeat for all your corners. So here I'm ending here and I'm ending here as well. So I need to flip this one vertically. Select it and flip it that way. That's correct. Of course, try and line it up. So while it's selected, you can drag it a little bit so it is perfectly lined up. We need to get our white cross here, so we need to travel through another object. Now our white cross is here. We can digitize our open object, running stitch, and remove that jump stitch and enter. And of course the last corner is where it ends. Now I didn't get these perfectly lined up. I don't know whether I was a little bit crooked or what, but you escape. You would need to take a little bit more time. You may not be able to get them absolutely perfectly lined up, but they should if they're the same length. So I think I've got a little bit off angle. This one might not be quite vertical and that's thrown it out. So take your time and do it nicely. Now I have an idea about getting around corners with asymmetrical, but I need to play around a bit more and I will make that a completely separate video. I need to get on to the object properties for the fill stitches for everybody. So have fun with this. I hope it's been useful. If there's any questions, don't forget to put in the comments what I missed or I didn't make clear or other things you'd like to know. Thank you.